Hello, good day. My name is Tessa Agong and I am tasked to report the Rizal'S Exile Week 11. So the content of my report was all about arrest and the decree of deportation. Second, bound to the Pitan. Third, life in the Pitan. Fourth, revamp in leadership. So the first thing we should discuss was arrest and the decree of deportation. As agreed, Rizal went back to Malacanang Palace where the Governor-General asked him again if his plan to return in Hong Kong, but he, Rizal, replied affirmatively. The Governor-General told him that there were leaflets found in his baggage during their stay in Hotel de Oriente. But Rizal said that the leaflet found in his baggage was not his property but was owned by his sister, Lucia. The leaflet entitled Pobres Frailes, or in English was Poor Friars, made the Governor-General dismayed and placed Rizal under arrest. So when we say leaflet, it is a printed sheet of paper, sometimes folded, containing information or advertising and usually distributed free. After he was placed under arrest, the decree of deportation was immediately published on July 7, 1892 at Gaceta de Manila. The decree of deportation came as a result of his possession of the leaflet he brought with him upon his arrival in Hong Kong. This was ordered because of his two novels, which were considered by the friars as anti-Catholic and anti-cleric. The friars said two novels, especially the El Filibusterismo. The decree called traitors of the nation, referring to the Gumburza where Jose Rizal dedicated his second novel. He once said that there was no other salvation of our country, Philippines, but separation from Mother Spain. So the second topic was bound to the Pitan. It was 10 in the evening on July 14, 1892, when Jose Rizal was scheduled to leave Fort Santiago. Upon hearing it, he prepared himself and packed up his things, waiting for his escorts to take him to the port. But these escorts came very late, just in time before midnight. When he was about to sleep, they woke him up and took him to the port. He boarded the ferry boat Cebu, bound to the Pitan around 1 in the morning. At the ferry boat, he was given special treatment as if he was a highly ranking official. The captain of the ship gave him a prime cabin marked as Jeff's, which means commanding officers. But he was guarded by a sentry and a corporal every time he ate his meals. On July 17, 1892, the ferryboat Cebu arrived in the Pitan, where he was met by Ricardo Carnicero, who offered him to live either in his house or at the Jesuit mission house. So, let's go to the third one. Life in the Pitan. Jose Rizal decided to stay at the house of Ricardo Carnicero, where he was told to oversee his activities daily. Ricardo, knew that Jose Rizal was not simply an ordinary deportee. Thus, he ordered his people to closely observe him. But because Jose Rizal was a good person, no wonder he befriended with Ricardo Carnicero. He received good treatment from him. He was allowed to roam around the place, though he required him report once a week. So Jose Rizal, in return, was also very grateful to him. On August 30, 1892, Ricardo Carnicero informed Governor General Eulogio Despojol on August 30, 1892 that Jose Rizal wanted reforms in the Philippines but does not want friars to be evicted. On September 21, 1892, he recorded submitted another report to Governor General Despojol informing him about the reforms. These were freedom of religion and of the press. While in the Pitan, Jose Rizal wrote to his mother in Hong Kong about his exile in the Pitan on July 25, 1892, expressed his profound gladness. So this was the content of his letter to his mother. In these days of lack of communication, travel, and deportation, I'm greatly worried thinking of you. And for this reason, I hasten to write to you to tell you that I am well here as if I were on vacation in this political military district. I don't miss anything except my family and freedom. And so, on September 21, 1892, the mail boat Butuan informed Jose Carnicero and Iquilor that their lottery ticket number 97366 won second prize amounting to 20,000 pesos. So each of them received an amount of 6,200 pesos. Jose Rizal used the money to buy a piece of land in Talisay to build his three houses, one square type made of bamboo, another hexagonal type made of wood, and the last was octagonal shape made of nipa. The first was his residence, while the second was for his pupils, and the last was for his livestock and plant and fruit-bearing trees. Some of his money was given to his father, who was still in Hong Kong. On January 1893, Jose Rizal became a teacher to some children in the Pitan, where he started with only 3 students and eventually increased to 21. He tutored them Spanish, English, mathematics, and how to work. His class started after lunch until 4 p.m. in the afternoon. In his letter to Blumentritt, he once said, "One can judge their enthusiasm for study when, even though they have to work for me, they work in order to study." Some members of his family visited and joined him in the Pitan. His mother and his sister Trinidad, and as well as his nephew Angelica, arrived in August. He had the chance to operate again his mother's eyes. When his mother left with Trinidad, his 2 sisters, Maria and Narcisa, together with his nephew, arrived in the Pitan. Unfortunately, his father could not travel to the Pitan because of his deteriorating condition. Rizal told Blumentritt in a letter that his father was growing weaker and weaker by the day. He missed his father so much. To his sister Josefa, he said, "Tell our father that I should like to see him. I hope we shall see one another very soon. Kiss him the hand for me." Jose Rizal, as a physician, had many patients not only from the Pitan but from the neighboring towns as well. Most of his patients were poor, where most often did not accept any money. One day, a wealthy Englishman went to his clinic and removed his cataract, where he was paid 500 pesos. The money he received was used to put up lamps in their streets. As a scientist, he was able to discover rare species which were named after him. These were the flying dragon, Draco Rizali, and the small beetle, Apogonia Rizali, and a toad, Rhacophorus Rizali. In his letter, Blumentritt, he described his life in the Pitan. "My life goes on quietly and drearily. To pass the time and help the local people here a little, I have turned a merchant. I bought hemp and ship it in Manila. I was lucky this month. I made $200 at one blow. At one blow. My present life is peaceful, solitary, with no glory, but I think it is also useful. I am teaching some poor but intelligent children how to read Spanish and English, and mathematics, including geometry, and how to behave like men. I have also taught the local people how to make a better living, and they think I am right. This coercion upon me has taught me a new language, Visayan, and how to handle a boot. It has given me a better knowledge of my country and has rewarded me with some $1,000. God can send good fortune in the midst of the persecutions of one's enemy. So, under revamp in leadership. Lastly, it was the last topic for me to tackle this today. While Rizal was in the Pitan, many changes took place in the municipal administration of Spain in the Philippines. Don Antonio Maura became the minister of the colonies. Governor General Julio Disposol was replaced by Federico Ochando and eventually took over by Ramon Blanco. During his incumbency, Jose Rizal wrote a petition for his freedom through his brother-in-law Manuel Hidalgo. In his petition, he strongly condemned his deportation in the Pitan, but unfortunately has not received any reply from him. There was a time when he was able to talk to him after his visit in the Pitan, where the Governor General Blanco promised him to transfer either in Ilocos or La Union. Like this Bohol, Ricardo Carnicero was replaced by Juan Sitges upon order of Orchando. It was allegedly replaced because of his close contact with Jose Rizal. Aside from this, the Jesuit society had undergone changes. Father Pablo Pastels was replaced by Father Juan Ricard as the superior of the Jesuit order in the Philippines. Father Pastel gave Jose Rizal a copy of a famous Catholic book by Father Thomas Kempis called Imitación de Cristo, or in English, Imitation of Christ. It was him also was instrumental for the recall of Ricardo. So that would be all. Thank you.
Welcome everyone, my name is Quinn Hanilet Salvatierra, BSBA Marketing 3rd year. This is a continuation to the topic on Rizal's exile. The discussion highlights first the plan of Rizal to volunteer as military doctor in Cuba, second his departure from the Pitan to Manila, third the voyage to Cuba, and lastly his arrival to Spain. Now first to discuss is Rizal's application as a military doctor. This plan was an idea suggested by Regidor, who then shared this with Blumentritt. Moving forward, this whole thing started when Rizal expressed he doesn't want to remain idle in the Pitan, thinking about the time Governor General Blanco promised Rizal to transfer him either in Ilocos or La Union. Rizal was hopeful that the general would fulfill this promise. Rizal then wrote a letter to the general, probably reminding him about it, and since Rizal did not receive feedback, he asked if he may go to Spain. He also wrote a letter to his sister Trinidad about him beginning to feel sick, and Rizal at this time received information about Andres Bonifacio's plan on having a revolution, but he of course refused to join. Then followed a suggestion coming from a friend, Jose Maria Basa, in Hong Kong, offered to help Rizal obtain pardon in Madrid. Unfortunately, this could only be secured through Governor General Blanco's approval and His Excellency. Yet this idea will not be very much to put into good use. But Regidor suggested, how about getting Rizal to volunteer as a military doctor in Cuba, since the Spanish forces badly needed doctors due to the outbreak during Cuban Revolution. So again, when Regidor shared this with Blumentritt, thinking it was a good idea, wrote a letter to Rizal, advising him to go to Cuba as a doctor in the Spanish Medical Corps. After receiving this letter, Rizal replied, dated November 20, 1895, that he will immediately write to Governor General for his enlistment. On November 21, the following day, Rizal informed his mother about his decision. As expected, the family expressed worry and fear, but he told them through a letter, "I received your letter on the 14th, and I understand perfectly your and father's fears about my going to Cuba. However, as you well say, we should have faith in God. Until now, He has saved me from all dangers. Why will He not save me from others in the future?" Also in another letter he said, "Don't worry about anything. We are all in the hands of divine providence. Not all who go to Cuba die. And finally, one has to die, at least may one die doing something good." November 17, 1895, Rizal wrote petition to General Blanco to volunteer as a physician in the Spanish army in Cuba, but no reply from the general at all. Again, he wrote another letter, as Rizal was determined to serve as a doctor. And then Rizal wrote to his mother, "I have therefore reiterated my request to serve in Cuba in the view of the fact that I have not received a reply from the first." Months and months have passed. Rizal grew tired, waiting for a reply. He decided to abandon his plans, and he told his friend Blumentritt, "I no longer planned to go to Cuba, since more than 6 months had passed since my application." After deciding to give up on his plan, Rizal came to receive a reply from the Governor General Blanco on July 1, 1896. The letter was sent in Dapitan aboard the ship España. The letter reads, "I have made representation with the government in connection with your petition and agreeing to your wishes. Have no objection to your going to Cuba as a physician to the Military Health Corps. If you still wish to take the step, the commandant of the Pitan will issue you a passport coming to Manila, where I shall, in my part, issue you a pass for the peninsula. There the Minister of War will commission you to the Cuban army." After putting some thought, Rizal finally decided to leave the Pitan in favor of Cuba. Now we go to the departure of Rizal from Dapitan to Manila. So according to Rizal, he had been in Dapitan for 4 years, 13 days, and a few odd hours. With this long stay, the townspeople learned to love him. In return for his kindness, they made sure that his departure was a big event. The whole town went to bid him farewell. Jose Rizal left at midnight, July 31, 1896. Boarded in España, which will take him to Manila. He was accompanied by his sisters Narcisa and Josefa, a niece, and 3 nephews. So Rizal arrived to Manila on August 6, 1896. The trip was a rushed one, since they planned to catch Isla de Luzon to dock in Manila, scheduled to leave for Spain. But the boat has already left a few hours before their arrival. Upon orders of His Excellency, Rizal was transferred to cruiser Castilla, anchored at a port in Cavite. He would stay aboard while waiting to be transferred to another ship. He was treated well at that time he was on that ship. So third discussion is the voyage to Cuba. On August 30, 1896, the governor gave Rizal 3 letters, 2 of which is addressed to the ministers of war, and of the colonies, and the other addressed to him. The two letters were intended to introduce him to the ministers for his enlistment in Cuba. On September 2nd, 1896, he was transferred to Isla de Panay. Before he left, he wrote to his mother again regarding his departure, telling them not to worry. In that letter, he also informed his mother of how thankful he was to the kindness shown by the Governor General Blanco. It says, "The most excellent Captain General has behaved towards me very well. I'm going to show him, if God gives me time and health, that I know how to reciprocate." The following day, September 3rd, 1896, Isla de Panay left Manila. He was, of course, treated well by officers and crew, but is under close surveillance. Governor Blanco sent a telegram to the Minister of Colonies. It read as follows: "I have the honor of informing Your Excellency that Dr. Jose Rizal y Alonso has embarked on the vessel Isla de Panay, which will leave this port tomorrow, the 3rd of this month. We have instructed management of the Compañía Transatlantica in this city that he is to be under close surveillance during the trip, that he is to be taken to the civil governor of Barcelona." The trip was difficult, according to Rizal. There had been much sickness. A captain died and his remains were thrown into the sea, and Rizal was made in charge of a sick Jesuit. Another ill was the brother-in-law of Pedro Paterno, Don Manuel Pinheiro, who was suffering from dysentery. This is an intestinal inflammation, primarily of the colon. Without adequate hydration, it can be fatal. On September 30th, 1896, the captain of the ship came to Rizal and informed him that he would be confined to his cabin. According to the officer, he received a telegraphic order for his arrest and detention. And lastly, Rizal's arrival in Spain. So Isla de Panay arrived in Barcelona on October 3rd, 1896. As a rule, no one is allowed to disembark without quarantine for 3 days. This time, Rizal was treated badly. He got confused with the change of events. When he left Manila, he was confident that he would be in Cuba to serve Spain. Now it was certain that he would never reach Cuba. According to Governor General Blanco, when Jose Rizal left for Spain in September 3rd, charges were filed against him in connection with insurgency in the Philippines, a rebellion in other words. The prosecutor wanted Jose Rizal back to face the charges. Jose Rizal was greatly disappointed. He had nothing to do with these disturbances. In fact, as we all remember, he even declined the offer to lead the revolution, as he knew that Andres Bonifacio had revolted already against the Spanish government. He told Blumentritt, "I was going to Cuba to make my name and answer all my calumnies. Now they tell me that I am not going there. I cannot believe this because it would be the greatest injustice. I have offered my services as a doctor, ready to risk my life in the hazards of war, leaving all my businesses behind. I am innocent and has nothing to do with the disturbances and can swear to it. And now, by way of reward, you are sending me to prison." On October 6, the people in Isla de Panay were allowed to land. Jose Rizal was awakened by an officer and was instructed to pack all his things. This time he was subjected to harsh treatment. He carried his heavy baggage all by himself, for he shall be taken to the Montjuic castle to be detained temporarily. At the prison fort, he was notified that he would be taken later to the headquarters of the commanding officer in charge of Montjuic. Turns out that the officer was Governor General Eulogio Despojol, the former Governor General of the Philippines, who ordered the deportation of Rizal and Dapitan. The time he was at headquarters, he waited about an hour before the governor arrived. The Governor General informed him that upon order of authorities he would be taken back to the Philippines, then return to Manila on board the steamer Colon, and would be given a second-class cabin aboard. The meeting only lasted for 15 minutes. Then after, he was brought to Colon at 8 o'clock in the evening of October 6th, and Colon left Barcelona for Manila.